what gave you the passion? What gave you the vulnerability to be able to speak up publicly on so many various platforms and have done so eloquently? What is it that's just making you want to just stand up and shout to the world outside of the horrific, and the travesty that's been taking place? Because there's a lot of people that get angry and they can talk amongst themselves. They can talk to their families. They could spread love and hope and cheer other ways. They can spread their message other ways. But what is making you just wanting to get on this podium?
I actually went to school until second grade, third grade, I think, in Iran. And I had a lot of family even then outside of Iran. So as a child, I had them visiting a lot and understanding the Western culture through their eyes. And even when I was 3, I lived in the States. I lived in Puerto Rico for 6 months, and then California for 6 months, and then I went back. So it was just like back and forth culture shock, right? And as a kid, you notice a lot more than people think, right? So it was very strange. And even then, in first grade, having to stand there in line on the first day of school, I had to start chanting "Death to America." And that's what they do to start the day. That's how children there have to start their day, is chanting "Death to America." And I started bursting out crying because I thought that meant my family is going to die in America. And that meant like I'm chanting for my family in America to die. And that was a traumatizing experience for me. And I had to, I was sent to the principal's office, and she closed the door and she literally looked me in the eye and told to calm me down. She's like, "That's just something we say so we don't get in trouble." And that was a memory that stayed with me for a very long time. And when you go back, and once I moved here, when you go back and forth, every time there's a culture shock and you feel for your people and you start analyzing, why is no one talking about all these things that are happening? It was not normal, right? Hearing, the last time I was in Iran was 6 years ago, and it was the most traumatizing time I was there because I was thrown into the morality car van 3 times in a matter of 2 weeks. And I normalized it. I laughed about it. But that's because I could get out immediately before being taken because I was a citizen of Canada. So I think when this whole movement, we were all angered at the Flight 176, people dying in 2019 or 2022. And we were angered in 2019 when everyone was protesting, and 3,000, Bloody November, 3,000 protesters died, were killed. And this time, I think we took it upon ourselves to be like, okay, we need to share their stories. Like, in whatever means, even if one other person can understand, that's one more person. So I made a post about it. I think it was like September 22nd was my first post. And I wrote about how Iran is in a hostage crisis and how, it's not about hijab. It's about every aspect of their lives being controlled. Women can't dance, can't sing. And then to see all these non-Iranians, I didn't know this post was going to be, effective to the point that it was. And to see all these people message me, friends, saying, "I never knew this," that's when I was like, okay, this is, maybe to us, this is normal because we've heard it so much and seen it and we've normalized it and desensitized ourselves. But people need to know, because this is not normal. This is not okay. This is not, and we need to give voice to these people who can't talk about how it's not okay, how it's affecting them. So that's how I got involved. And seeing that it could affect others and make them learn, that's why.
I think that's beautiful. Beautiful in the sense that you were able to really speak up and have a voice, and that voice being able to be carried, and then to also see the camaraderie from outside of cultural understanding, and as well as the Iranians, which is pretty cool. I'm seeing that now. Like I'm seeing a lot of people sharing this information that truly are dumbfounded by it. Can't believe it. There was a video that I don't know which one of you posted it, but this scenario about this girl that was essentially taken in by the government, beat up, raped. And I was sharing it, and it was a young woman. I think she was like 15, 16 years old. And there was just one clip, and then the other clip, and the other clip, and there's so many variables. I was getting, literally my DMs were blowing up. Like, just, I can't believe this. Is this real? Is this real? I can't believe this. Those were the general consensus. What is the thing that we can share to the people right now that are listening that can really solidify in the most simplest of terms the reality that is taking place over there. Like, let's try to conceptualize all of the clips and the headlines and the information that is just being bombarded, because it's a copious amount of information, and it's really hard for somebody that doesn't understand that side of things to be able to really internalize it and make sense of it. So, both of you, this is a question to both of you. What would be the thing that you guys can explain to people in simple terms that just don't understand what's happening in the world right now in Iran?
They're done with theocracy and they want democracy. They want basic human rights. They want their voices to be heard. They want to be like other countries, like I mentioned in the last podcast. Like, they want to be like westernized countries, America, Canada. They want to be like Europe. They want to be like Asia minus North Korea. They want just basic freedom. They're done with being suppressed and being oppressed. They don't. I mean, that's just in the most basic way I can explain it. So what they're fighting for right now is to get a regime change, not a reform.
I think simplest terms, they want these people gone. They want their again, the best way to put it is it's a hostage crisis. So these are invaders that are in power, and people want one of their own up there that represents them. These are people who only represent their own interests. And if you look at all sectors of a government and what they provide in terms of like the economics, the human rights, the freedom, in all the sense, nothing that they do benefits the people. Like, literally, even the money that they get, the resources that they sell, it's the seventh richest country in natural resources. But
not to interrupt you, but what's the likelihood of that actually happening? I mean, look at government worldwide. What's the likelihood, whether it be a puppeteer, whether it be part of this whatever you want to call it, this organization behind the scenes, Illuminati, I don't give a shit, whatever it is, there is always some power play behind the scenes that is in control of the entire thing. So the reality of actually having some sort of reformation or a switch out or a swap out, like in realistic terms, like I understand there's a magnoscope right now or microscope on top of Iran, and the world is seeing everything that's taking place. And at some point something has to happen, otherwise it's going to snap. And I understand that. But what is the reality, I guess, in the next 2 years, the next 12 months, the next 6 months, while all this is happening, how much more suffering is going to take place? And before something actually makes a shift, is my question to you. What do you think about that? Like, do you think it's
that we can determine? But I think what is really powerful in this movement is that it's not just internal, where people in Iran are fighting alone with just themselves, which is already very powerful, but they have the people outside of Iran supporting them in every step of the way, right? From all over the world. There's Iranians, I think I don't know how many, 4 million, something like that are the Iranian diaspora are scattered. And a lot of Iranians do have power, do have influence, do have the money, do have the resources to utilize to continue this fight. So it's a fight that everyone is there's different warriors in it. There's the ground warriors who are doing an impeccable job, and all hats off to them. They're doing all the work, but there's us here that are also supporting them. So there's no percentage of how successful this is going to be or if it's going to be successful. But what we do know is that they're not going to stop at this point. Nothing is instilling fear in them anymore. They are done. They don't want this regime. They've been done for a very long time. And finally, they're understanding that a lot of them are chanting that they'd rather die than have this regime, right? They rather risk their lives than have this regime. And there's a lot of power to that. And that's why we help put political pressure, social pressure, so no one aids the government of Iran anymore. And that's all we can do. And, we just have to keep fighting on.
I think it's safe to say
there's a lot of
point.
activists.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I think it's safe at this point that we've surpassed the point of no return. So it's just a matter of time before they're gone. If you see videos right now of Iran, their women already have their hijabs off. People are reporting from Iran, it's a good 50 to 60% that women on the streets have their hijab off. So that ball has already started rolling. So
Yeah.
there's, at this point, we can say there is no going back. We're kind of in that middle zone right now of this whole revolution
Well,
happening. Mhm.
yeah, well, the thing is
Yours.
that people know if people stop now, that the scary part is people stopping now is more dangerous than people
Hmm.
to keeping on in this fight we're on, because this is the same government that tracks every single one of your moves, right? So and I wrote about this before, that right now the government is in defensive mode because they are having people protesting and being so actively and vocal about this regime change, right? Once people backtrack, and they know this in Iran, once they backtrack and they're like, okay, I'm scared, I'm not going to do this anymore, all these people who've been at protests, all these people who vocalized, they will one by one start getting identified. One by one, they will be arrested. One by one, they will be murdered. Their families will be threatened. So that's going to take a toll on the people a lot more than continuing on this fight and finally getting rid of this regime after all.
That's the scary part. And that's a reality.
That's a reality.
Because
Yeah.
it's literally, it's happened, historically speaking, it's happened over and over and over again.
Yeah.
It's just frightening. The thing that frightens me the most is every time I go on, the New York Times or Al Jazeera or whatever, it's just headline after headline, and it's like the top 2, 3, 4, 5. It's Iran's this, riddled with this happened and this happened, and I'm just like, my God, it just won't stop.
And
It's
that's
nothing.
1% of the coverage. The coverage should
Yeah,
be a
exactly.
lot more. And that's
No, totally. I'm with you 1000%. But what I'm saying is, it doesn't stop in the sense that I'm just waiting for something to turn positive. I'm waiting for a headline that says X, and X, and X, and Y took place. Finally, something. There is a shift that is happening. I want to ask a quick question because I know we're kind of going, I'm rambling here, but for the people that don't understand, and myself included to some extent, right? For those that are listening, I think there's a distinctive difference between being a devout Muslim or whatever religion, Baha'i, it doesn't matter, and then leveraging and using that religion in order to gain control, what have you. Now, is the removal of the hijab, is that a political piece? Is that a political stand-up? Or is that against the religion, or is that against the regime?
Oh my gosh, I could talk about this all day. Do you have anything to say before I start ranting?
Go for it.
Because I really want to know, and I'm sure people want this.
Yeah,
Please.
I think us Iranians have been trying to say time and time again, this is no disrespect to the religion. This is just about freedom of choice, and that's it, right? When I was in Iran, and every time I go back, I have family that is devout religion Muslim, and they wear full hijab, and never once have they tried to enforce it on me, judged me, or didn't sit at the dinner table with me. They all have welcomed me with open arms, and me with them. There was, cultural barriers for sure. Like one time I went and I thought I could hug them, saying I'm a hugger. So I went up to one of the men that I know, and we grew up together, and I came to hug him, and he literally almost fell back, tripped back, and too much. And I was so, at first I was like, why? And then they told me because of religion. I was like, no, we laughed about it, right? We all sat at the same dinner table. We all, shared the same meals and shared conversations. There was no judgment. So it's not about that. It's about freedom. We want people who are Muslim to practice being Muslim. And the government is not practicing true Islam. Whoever I speak to who is familiar with the religion and knows the ins and outs, they are just using that as a ploy to brainwash. Nothing
It's
that
pure
they do. It's their own. It's a fake religion that they've created, and they've named it Islam. It's a completely different thing that they've created. Anything that benefits them. So
people who are truly religious in Islam as well agree with this also. I mean, this is what also makes this movement so impactful, because we have so many different types of groups who agree with us. From people who are very religious, they know that this is being exploited. This is not what true Islam means. Feminist groups, I can go on and on about this, but even animal rights groups, environmentalists, everyone is in on this because they just do so many moral breaches in terms of what they represent. Everything about them is a scam. Everything. And as Donia was saying,
Sorry, you keep cutting out, so I didn't know if you stopped.
Oh no, you're good. I think my Wi-Fi is being weird. Continue though.
It's all good. It'll all look good when it's all done.
Am I being glitchy though? Just quickly, like, because I noticed
You're
a few
fine.
glitches with you guys. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they're just a scam. I think they should be considered a mafia at this point. They're not a government group. They should be considered an organized crime at the least. They're not true Islam. They just exploit religion to get what they want from money and power. That's basically it.
Yeah.
I mean, they got into power. One of their marketing like manipulations was they fooled people to believe that Allah put Khomeini's face on the moon. And so people really believed they saw his face on the moon, and that was a sign from Allah that this is their true, their leader, right? Like people actually believed they saw his face on the moon. So that's just to show you. And I'll share a quick story. Last time I went to Iran, there was someone that was a pro-regime that I unfortunately had to be at a dinner table with, and it was very uncomfortable. And during dinner, he started out of nowhere bawling his eyes out. So we're all just kind of like, why are you crying? And he's like, I just love Khamenei so much, the supreme leader. He started crying for his love for him because he's like, he is my God. So they've been brainwashed from very young age to believe this is God.
Man.
It's just a cult, honestly.
Like we were talking about the other day. Ayana, we were talking about the other day. I mean, this is Kim Jong-un all over again. I mean, literally the only difference I think is the fact that they just have a closed country and nobody has access, because I've just seen so many documentaries, and I don't know if you guys have, but it is like, it's like a cartoon. Like these people revere him as a god, and their whole entire existence is around this man who is just a man. Anyways, I don't want to get into that. So I understand the similarities. It's just, it's sick. It's literally sick.
It's sick. It's mass manipulation, and that's why they censor media, because they don't want their absurdity to get out, and for people to be exposed to what the real world is.
Yeah, I think it says, like, digging into psychology of things, the ones that are in support of people like Khamenei and Khomeini, it just comes down to the psychology of being brainwashed. I mean, that's my personal opinion and belief, that they've just been conditioned to think this way for so many years now, and from their own parents, who at this point, it's the generation, I think even our grandparents' generation have experienced this. So it's just conditioning over the years to think this is correct, this is right, and now we're putting the brakes on it and saying, no, this is wrong. We need to get rid of this, like, ASAP. So this is why we're here. This is the revolution that's happening.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people that are in poverty, and they love that because they target these families who are in extreme poverty and desperate for money, and buy their children essentially to put them in these quote unquote like supreme leader schools, like, 𝗣𝗟𝗪𝗍𝗪s, all of them from as young as age 4, and from then they
so that's when the brainwashing starts.
Yeah, there's no education. The education is even our schools, we had his picture everywhere on the front of the books, his quotes. It was just like him. But in their schools, it's a whole different ballgame of like brainwashing since you were a child. So these people, unfortunately, a lot of there's not that many supporters of them, but the ones who have been extremely brainwashed.
So it just sounds like they're masking theocracy really with dictatorship, because that's what it sounds like to me.
Oh, for sure.
Correct. So for them to leverage and use religion as the means for control. I mean, it's just the same thing as saying that, like, what do you call them? Like terrorists and whatever, like, Allah told me to do this. Like, no, he didn't. The guy brainwashing you is what told you. If you meet truly religious people of all beliefs, they're generally, I'm not going to say all, but generally, they're very peaceful people. Like they're not.
Oh yeah.
It's just, it's a weird sickness. It's a sickness because they start manipulating. And the fact that you were telling me at like 4 years old, they start this, man.
Yeah, and they say if anyone goes against the word of God, aka the word that they say, their translation of the word of God, their translation of the Quran, then they're waging war on God and they deserve the severest punishment. And that's what Khomeini in his 1988 secret decree had sent out to massacre everyone, the political prisoners, and people did it. They massacred. There was 4 people on the death committee, and it's interesting to state that one of the members of the death committee is now the president. So in 1988, he was on the death committee to execute all these political prisoners because they waged a war on God, and now he's the president, and he's also preaching that same choir that
they're doing the same thing right now.
they're doing this, and they've been doing the same thing, right?
So let me ask you this, and I could be overreaching here, but like outside of the general reality of what's taking place, like they're trying to keep everything hush hush. They have so much control. Why execute them? Like really, like I'm trying to open up a dialogue here. Like, why would you execute them? You could imprison them. You could take away their livelihood. Why execute them? To what? To make, what do you call it?
More prisoners. To make
it's 2 reasons. Honestly, it's just 2 reasons. But the main reason being is to deter other protesters from coming out. They don't want people to go against them. They want to send a message out there for us as well. I mean, this is why it's a psychological warfare, as they say. They want to send a message where it's like, you cannot interfere with our plans. You cannot go against us. You cannot be anti-regime. The simplest way. So it's just punishment by the most lethal means.
100%, because it's not like in the prison. I mean, here's the thing. I was reading statements made by people whose families had been in the prisons from 1988. And these people were just in so much torture and pain that they were wanting to die from that pain. Like, I mean, that's the thing. I think we're focusing on this execution, but what we need to really hone in on, there are things happening to these people. I get a migraine. When I get a migraine and I don't have my medication available, I'm like, God, take me now, right? Like that, like. And then I the other day I had and I felt so guilty of feeling so like in pain because there's 𝗦𝗢𝗕𝗦𝗖𝗥𝗓𝗏, a political reporter who's in the prison right now, had his legs broken and refused medical treatment. So imagine you're sitting in that pain. So I don't yes, the execution is horrible, but these people are already suffering before the execution. That's what we need to focus on. Like, they're in pain. They're being tortured. Women are being raped. So those are all just horrifying. I
think that's why we're also so angry. Sorry, I think that's why we were so angry about the headlines going on with the whole fake news thing. It's like people are concerned with the headline of what's considered accurate, what's inaccurate. But it's like, as Dunya was saying, they're literally going through torture and psychological tormenting. That's just the least. I mean, there's just so much going on right now that's not being talked about. So,
well, of course. I mean, the media is just full of shit 99% of the time.
100%. I mean, it's ridiculous. People are in solitary confinement for months. Like, imagine being in solitary confinement for months. It's just unheard of. And to hold on the semantic of a sentence, of a headline, because it's at sentencing, because it's just such a it's so tone deaf, because it's I don't know if that's the right word, but it's just, you're looking at what's happening in Iran through a Western lens, and you can't do that because they're not it might look like a democracy because they have a parliament and all these different systems, but they're not a democracy. You can't be caught up on the word sentencing. There's no sentencing. There's protesters on the street that don't even make it to imprisonment to get sentenced to death. They're getting shot before even making it to prison. So you're worried about sentencing. They haven't been officially sentenced. This regime is going to send an official statement sentencing 15,000 prisoners. Like, it's mind-boggling to me. And I think what frustrated us in the diaspora was the fact that for 2 months we've been begging people, please talk about it. Please share their voice. please amplify their voice. And finally, we were getting here and there celebrities, media coverage. But this sentencing misinformation within a matter of like 24 hours was being spread like wildfire. NBC, who has not been posting anything on Instagram about it, made a post about misinformation. And it's like, that's more important to you than a 10-year-old that just got killed and a 2-year-old that got shot a month ago. And the prisoners, political prisoners, the protesters a month ago had a fire burning in the prison that killed hundreds of them, that was started by them, the regime, to kill these people. So it's just, I could go on about my anger about this little stuff.
No, let it go, because people need to understand what's happening. I mean, like you said, people are looking at it through a Western lens. Is that it's not just necessarily that. It's like we only get to see over here the superficial. Growing up, when things would be happening, my mom would always say, like, this is the actual news. We were watching, because, we have satellite TV and we're watching what's happening back home. I'm Lebanese, so we get to see things that are happening in Lebanon and, Syria and Palestine, what have you, and what's actually happening in the Middle East. And so it's like, this is the real news. Like, this is really happening. And you're seeing kids getting blown up and shot and people literally just crossing the street and being bombed. Like, they don't show that stuff. They don't talk about it because it's like, it's almost like this taboo, because we're trying to coat everything and make it pretty, and we're going to show you news about kittens. And then everything else becomes this brainwashing. Because, I mean, that's what news is. Like, news media, it's just, I mean, Kanye West said it best. Nothing on the news but the blues. That's all I got to say.
Exactly. No, I mean, I think for us Iranians, we've seen so much that's come to light for us, so much truth that's been uncovered. From, what was it, earlier this week, was it Women's March, who had 𝗦𝗢𝗦𝗧𝗧𝗏 represent us for Iranians. And I think we literally bombarded them in the comment section saying, please do not choose 𝗦𝗢𝗦𝗧𝗏 to represent us. We have so many people, we'll send you all of them. Like, please don't have her speak. And they went ahead with it anyway. We have UNICEF, we have UN, like, we're just constantly bombarding them, telling them, please, like, help us out here. Give these Iranians a voice. They're literally risking their lives to send us content. The least we could do is just put, use your platform, just put one post about it, just something. And it's just, not only are they not acknowledging it, they're almost ignoring us. And this is what's been the most frustrating.
Yeah, but it's all intentional. I mean, everything has, there's a rhyme and a reason for everything what they're doing.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. They're just turning a blind eye. And this is what going back to the whole fake news thing, it's like, here we are literally killing ourselves, trying to put the news out there. And they just, they use something else that makes us look worse, it makes people discredit what's going on here. So we think that from now on, if the news is, people are going out of war with this, which is such a Western thing to do. I'm sorry. Like, this is such a, obsolete thing to look at. There, as Donya was saying, there's so much going on. You have 10-year-old that just was killed. What was his name? 𝗬𝗎𝗓𝗏. They're shooting people from their cars who are just honking. I mean, just little things like this, yet that's the headline. So the anger is just, it's just been so eye-opening for us during this whole process this past 2 months. So, but we're still hanging on this bumpy ride.
Yeah, they shot a woman recording the protests. They shot her. She caught her own death on camera. So let's talk about that. What we need to understand in the Western world, I think Western world is really stuck on the fact that we need to have factual, confirmed information. But how do you get factual, confirmed information from a government whose entire reign has been because of their censorship and their lies and deceit? Citizen journalism is the only factual information that you should be speaking on. Not even this misinformation. It was confirmed by the state media of Iran. That, like, you would rather ask the dictators if this is true, as opposed to the people that they are, controlling. And, it's insane. And I think one big thing is this Western fear to meddle into foreign affairs, and they see it as political. This is not political. This is a human rights crisis, right? That's what people need to understand. You're not meddling into foreign affairs because it's a dictatorship, an authoritarian regime that has taken an entire nation hostage. So the feeling that you have when you're watching Handmaid's Tale and you're rooting for the people, that's exactly what's happening to Iranian people. So you can't be in fear of misinformation and
It's a
sharing.
great analogy.
Right. Like, I mean, it's like you're in fear of spreading misinformation and being too political, but this hesitancy needs to be gone, because other than that, you're not going to get factual information. You're waiting for dictators to give you facts, and that's never going to that's not going to happen. They're just going to diminish it. And 𝗦𝗢𝗦𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧 brought that up. What we need to understand is that the regime has infiltrated the Western world, and they're everywhere, and they are strategic masterminds. They're
so sneaky.
Their cyber and psychological warfare is on it. When everyone was saying Trump is a great marketer, right? And there was that whole debate, right? This regime is Trump times 100, like brilliant masterminds. I'll give them that, right? They're not just on the battleground killing people, but psychologically and cyber war is very real. And they have people who look like us, who look like normal Iranians, do-gooders, who are spreading subtle misinformation to diminish this movement and diminish the brutality of the regime. So that's what we're trying to make people be cognizant of.
Mm-hmm. And the regime hates being in the middle of controversy at the most. They hate being under spotlight. So what's going on here is that we are pushing that as Iranians outside the diaspora. We're pushing so hard to keep the spotlight on them, because we know the moment that spotlight is off and the eyes are off, they can go ahead and do whatever crimes that they're used to doing under the radar. So this is so important. This is so important. And I think I cannot emphasize this enough, where we just continuously need to leave a spotlight on them and putting the information out there that is the most factual sense of the reality of what's going on over there. And there are pages, there are accounts now that do report to the best of their knowledge and the best of their factual ability to put as an accurate source of what's happening over there. Because, I mean, to be quite honest, there is no journalist on the ground. There is no media on the ground, because it's currently not allowed. So you technically can't fact check anything, but when there's videos coming in from the ground of what's happening, you cannot make that up, So exactly.
And Western media and Western journalists have gone there, but guess where they are? They're in prison. So they're not
exactly
doing what they're supposed to be doing, because these people have been arrested and now are in horrendous conditions in the prisons, held as hostage. That's how Iran has, the Islamic regime holds power over other countries. One of the ways is that they hold their people hostages in the prisons.
That's what I was going to ask. Well, let's say an American citizen goes to try to get coverage over there and gets arrested. Can America intervene at that point? Would America intervene?
I mean, can America?
Has it happened?
Yeah, it's happened. I think don't quote me on this. So 2009, part of the negotiation that Obama made, it was release of some hostages. Again, don't quote me on this at all, but I think they paid money, I think 400 million, I don't know, something like that. Again, don't quote me on it. They've had to pay a lot of ransom and to get their citizens out of it. Yeah.
That's another thing they do, though. It's another sort of kind of getting money from other countries. They're holding hostages.
Yeah.
They know they can't kill them, and if they do something, could start a war. Because at the end of the day, they're not going to put themselves that far out there. They're going to try to keep themselves in check. But for the most part, they're doing this to get as a leverage to get even more money. Part of of the dirty business they do.
So even, not to interrupt you, but so even let's say you got the best terms ever. Okay, you're a devout religious Muslim. You're a man. You do everything by the book, but you still don't have freedom.
No, you don't. You don't have freedom.
There's no freedom. Like, you're limited to what you are able to accomplish, I guess, in the sense of, from a professional standpoint, what you can do from a personal standpoint. Your every move is watched. That's frightening. And then you take that and then you go to the opposite end of the spectrum with women, with children, with those that don't want to be controlled by religion. That is a scary place to be when you have zero rights, you have zero freedom. that gets masked as a democracy when in reality it's a dictatorship. And you can call it what you want. You can make it all fancy and pretty. The fact that you're leveraging religion in order to seize control, just shut up, please, everybody who's thinking that, because that's not the reality. And on top of which, now you have everybody over in the United States or in the Western worlds that are watching this stuff on social media, looking at it from a perspective of superficial lens, right? And can't really grasp the fact that what's actually happening is if you do something wrong, you could be crossing the street and you just get shot and your life is over instantly within seconds. Like, imagine putting yourself in that perspective. That is the reality that these people are living in every single day. And that is heartbreaking to the extreme. And what can we do? What can we do, like right now, that can move the needle? Is there anything that we can do that really move the needle outside of spreading awareness, outside of doing these shows and talking about it? Like the general masses, is there something that we can do that is organized that can be done?
I think the biggest thing that we're trying to do right now is, at least we don't want to start war. I mean, war is not the answer, but the very least that we can do is to stop our leaders, governments, our local leaders, to stop doing business with them. I mean, we don't need you to do anything else other than just recognize them as a terrorist organization, recognize them as a mafia. You cannot do business as normal with the mafia. That's just kind of our main goal here. We're putting
what about
pressure
what about average people, just like everyday people? Like, they're seeing this or listening to this right now. They're seeing the stuff on social. What can we do as just everyday citizens?
I mean, I think obviously social awareness is huge, right? Sharing, tagging news channels, sharing the stories. I think one thing that I've been saying is all of us are connected to someone of influence, someone of power, someone in the politics, someone who's a celebrity. Utilize them, share these stories with them, get them to talk about it because they have more exponential reach. So I think that's really important. But beyond just social awareness, it is, of course, we need to put pressure on politicians. Iranians are not saying help us. Iranians are just saying share our voice and don't help them, right? So it's a notion of stop doing business with the devil, stop hoping for negotiations. Don't say, don't be the president of the US and say we're putting a pause on the negotiations. No, there should be no deal with the devil. They should be cut off. Their assets should be cut off. They should not be. I mean, these people are rich. Like, these people have money all outside of Iran. Freeze their assets, right? I'm sure they're not keeping their money in Toman in Iran, right? So their asset, put pressure on them.
That's actually a good one.
Right, yeah, freeze their assets. I mean, stand up there and don't say these are protests. Say people want regime change. Call them dictators. Don't be political. I mean, if you can't ask politicians to not be political, but this is not political. This is a human rights crisis, right? So acknowledge it as that. That puts pressure on them so that they know it's not now, it's not never. There never is going to be any kind of, established relationship anymore between them. So even if they suppress these protests, this revolution, they put so much fear and it stops, moving forward, there's never going to be a deal. They're identified as terrorist group because they are the biggest sponsor of terrorism in the world. Number one in executions per capita. So acknowledge them for what they are. And I think putting people first for once before politics would help the world in this case, because they do fund so much of the harm the world feels. So especially the Middle East.
You guys have an audience listening right now. Where can they find you if they want to learn a little bit more about you, what you have to offer, as well as the messaging that you guys are providing?
Social media, Instagram. I think that's where we've both been very vocal on. And we try to post like daily updates on what's happening in Iran, sort through the footage and put things that are valuable. So definitely Instagram is where I'm the most prominently outspoken on.
Cool.
Same
I'll
here.
tag your accounts
Instagram.
on that. Wonderful. Well, hey, it's been such a pleasure. This is awesome. I'm glad we did a follow-up. I'm glad we got you on. I'm always open to do more of these. If I have to do 100 of them, I will, because this is just ridiculous. Ayana, just wanted you letting you know, like, we're at right now, I was just looking at the numbers. So far, our episode is at 141,684 downloads, and we're still going. So
Wow.
we're getting people,
Okay.
we're getting people out there. Yeah.
I hope this one goes
Yeah.
even
Awesome. We can do
Inshallah.
more with Farmida later. She's also amazing. So
Yeah, I'd love to
Yeah.
get her on.
Oh.
I'm just as many voices we can get that has reach, so that we can just leverage everybody's platform.
really
And then if I'm getting a few 100,000, you're getting, you know, so on and so forth. That that would be amazing. My podcast network is the
send you a
biggest,
list of people to recommend for sure.
Yeah,
I'll send
yeah.
you a list of amazing people.
for sure.
Thank you so
Awesome.
much. The Iranian community appreciates it, and we can't thank you enough.
Tremendously.
Hopefully, Iran will
Thank
be
you.
free, and we can host.
Hopefully, man.
We'll all go
Hopefully.
together.
I mean,
We'll vacation there together.
as long as I can,
Best hospitality there.
as long as I can have some hookah and some tea, I'm Gucci.
Oh
You
yeah,
would, yeah.
definitely.
All right. All right.
All right, thank
Thank you,
so
ladies.
much.
It was
Bye.
a wonderful.
Thank you, Mo.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Donia. Bye.
Thank you.